Welcome to the Monday episode of Arch City Sports. I'm your host, AJ Nance, and today we have a lot to get into. The St. Louis Blues played this weekend on Saturday night versus the Capitals, an 8-1 loss. We'll dive into that and much more. SLU basketball has now played 2 games on the season. They are 1-1 with their first win coming against NAIA School Avila on Sunday afternoon. And the St. Louis Cardinals made big news this past week, announcing who their first baseman was going to be for the 2025 season, but also big updates on Sonny Gray and Ryan Helsley and their status as going into next year, and are they going to be on our opening day roster. But before we get into all of that today, make sure to go follow us on all social media at Arch City Sports on Instagram, TikTok. We're also on X. Subscribe on YouTube if you're listening or viewing over there right now. And of course, go follow and rate the podcast on Spotify or Amazon Music if you are listening over there right now. Let's start with the St. Louis Blues. We are now 7-8 on the season. Like I said, an 8-1 loss to the Capitals on Saturday night. Scott Perunovich was with the lone goal in this one, his first goal of his career. And believe it or not, this is the second 8-1 loss the Blues have had in the last week and a half, let alone the entire season. Losing to Ottawa 8-1 in Ottawa, and then a very poor performance on Saturday night at home versus the Capitals. What I'm seeing right now with our St. Louis Blues is defensively we are lost. Now, Colton Parayko has been a bright spot for us. I believe now 4 goals on the year for Parayko, and he's been long and athletic defensively. But defensively right now, as a group, as a unit, we are lost. Without Philip Broberg, you lose arguably your best defenseman, offensively and defensively. And honestly, even though he's not a powerhouse defensively, I think Torrey Krug would have a huge positive impact on this group. Without him the entire season from day one, getting injured this past offseason, and now without Philip Broberg and Nick Leddy's, after having a I thought, really strong start to the year in Seattle, he's been not very good, and he's been out of the lineup, also dealing with some injuries. It's been a rough season. Justin Falk's been okay, nothing great, nothing awful. But honestly, this is the group that I thought would carry our team. Offensively, we knew we would have some struggles. I'm going to dive into that in just a second here. But I think without Philip Broberg, you're losing arguably your best player so far in this 2024 campaign. And it's been rough without him. 7-8, though, without, honestly, arguably your 2 best players in Robert Thomas and Philip Broberg. You're not in an awful spot because those guys will be back in the next couple weeks here. But how these next couple weeks play out is going to decide your whole season. So, big couple weeks coming up. As I mentioned, without Robert Thomas, what I'm seeing offensively with this group, because yes, we can look at giving up 8 goals. Some of that's on Binnington, but a lot of it was just the defenseman leaving him out to dry. But what I'm seeing with this offensive group, because you look at it, we're scoring 1, 2, maybe 3 goals per game, unless you're talking about that game in Toronto where we scored 5. Without Robert Thomas, we lack a creator offensively. Now, we have guys that have the potential to put it in the back of the net with Pavel Buchnevich, Jordan Kyrou, Jake Neighbors, guys like that. But we lack the guy that is setting them up, that is creating everything offensively. And that's Robert Thomas, who will give his 20, 25 goals, maybe even 30, is the future for Robert Thomas. But this is the guy that's going to give you over 50 assists, potentially even more, over that 60 amount when it comes to the assist category. And without him for the next, I guess it's been a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks without him, so another 4 weeks without Robert Thomas. I just don't know where that offensive creation is going to come from. So what that tells me is that when we want to score goals, we have to do it the dirty way. We have to do it the not sexy way, which is right in front of the net, crash the net hard. Nathan Walker had a goal just like that in Philadelphia to tie it. I believe it was last week now, several games ago. Late in that one where it was a ricochet rebound off the goalie's pad, and Nathan Walker slid in and perfectly put it in the back of the net. Those are the type of goals you have to get without a guy like Robert Thomas in your lineup. We don't have the luxury of what other teams have around the National Hockey League. Not all teams, but several teams have it where they have multiple lines with multiple creators. I know Colorado's been in a rough spot, but you have Nathan McKinnon and then you have Cale Makar. That type of offensive creation, and all we have is Robert Thomas, really. Philip Broberg has been creating some from the D line, but again, he's out. So without Robert Thomas, offensively, we have to rely on these kind of dirty style goals where Brandon Saad's crashing the net, Jake Neighbors crashing the net. Ideally, Buchnevich and Kyrou add a little bit of flash to you and can create some goals that majority of the guys on the team will not do. But we have not seen that a whole lot from those two guys, especially since Robert Thomas has been out. Like I mentioned, though, a bright spot for the Blues this year, Colton Parayko. Arguably his best season last year of his career, and he's adding on top of that this year. A great start for Colton Parayko. I made a clip about him the other day, and love to see that from the now veteran leader on our D-line. Our next game is Tuesday night at home versus the Boston Bruins. The Bruins have been one of the most, I guess, disappointing teams, you could say. They are 7-2. They have 16 points on the year. We have 14 points. So two teams that I think can play better than that how they have played. Now, I think top to bottom, especially when it comes to star power, the Bruins are better than us. But these are two teams that are sitting about 500, and we'll see what it looks like on Tuesday night here at home in St. Louis. I do expect, even though Binnington did not have a great night in net, I expect Binnington to be in the lineup for that one. His history with the Bruins as well. So should be a fun one on Tuesday night. Hopefully the Blues can get back to 500 at 8-8, at least get a point in that one and continue to build up points here. And hopefully when Thomas and Broberg get back, we're still in the mix of potentially making the playoffs out of it. Moving on to SLU. A lot of hype for SLU basketball this year. I've talked about it quite a bit. They have had 2 games since our last podcast last Monday, and they are now 1-1 on the season. First game at versus Santa Clara. It was in like this little classic series that they did. An 85-78 loss, which is honestly a kind of a surprise. I was looking at their schedule going to the season. The first 13, 14 games looked very winnable before conference play came around. I believe we play. There's one tough game near at the end there, Grand Canyon, I believe it is, that could be difficult. But Santa Clara is a team that a lot of people, and they said it on the broadcast, this could be a team in the Mountain West Conference could give Gonzaga the best run for their money. So this might be a loss later in the year where we look at it and it's not a huge catastrophe of a loss. 85-78. We were down by double digits late in this one and cut it down to, I believe it was 4 or 5 with 3 or 4 minutes left, and just could not keep it going. A lot of defensive issues in this one. As good as Robbie Avila is offensively, defensively there's some things to discuss. You have to put him in, for people that don't follow basketball a whole lot, you have to put him in really a drop defense where you drop him off pick and rolls, because Santa Clara was just trying to target him the entire time. He's slower on his feet. They were trying to get the switch and have the guard go to work on him. And so you have to put him in a drop defense, which means there's a lot of pull-ups available right in front of him. Coming downhill, there's a lot of three-point opportunities from it as well. And Santa Clara was capitalizing off it. I need to pull up there's one player that was absolutely killing us for Santa Clara, and he showed a lot of promise. Ball, B-A-L, was great. 24 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 7 for 13 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3. And then they had, I believe it was Cameron or Clayton Tongue off the bench, who also had 16 plus points. It might have even been 18 points. Tilly, their big man, had 17 points. So they were shooting the heck out of it. I mean, looking at 3 of their starters, Tilly 2 for 3 from 3. Brian was 4 for 9 from 3, or 4 for 7 rather, and then Ball was 3 for 7 from 3. So they were shooting it really well. And first half they weren't missing. Second half they slowed down a little bit, but they had one heck of a night. And like I said, I don't think this is going to be a team or a loss rather that we look back and it ruins a chance to go into the March of Madness or anything like that. I think it's a first game of the year with a whole new squad, a whole new everything here in St. Louis, a whole new roster shakeup. Besides, Jimerson, Hughes, and Thames, pretty much everybody else in our rotation is different. So it's going to take a little bit of growing, and we saw a much better performance, especially in the second half, versus Avila, which again is an NAIA school, repping the NAIA school community there. If you guys did not know, I went to an NAIA school and played there, but it was a 95-44 win versus Avila. And first half, I mean, shoot, it was like 19-18 under the 12-minute timeout. And so I had that feeling we were just going to pull away eventually, which we did. But Avila was coming out flying from the beginning. The biggest thing I was looking at was who was going to start for Robbie Avila. Now, I moved on without even discussing that. Robbie twists his ankle pretty hard. He's going to be out the next 3 or 4 weeks. That's a huge blow for the St. Louis Billikens, and it's going to be hard to make up for that. It's going to take a whole community of guys to make up for the production that Robbie was going to give us. One last thing I want to discuss before I get into that Avila game. A couple points that I think, a couple categories or I guess box score statistics that we can really dial in on to play better moving forward. Defensively, obviously, I mentioned the issues. We're fixing a lot of that right now. 0 bench points versus Santa Clara. Now, Santa Clara is a much better opponent than Avila. We scored tons of points off the bench. I mean, Larry Hughes had 15 by himself against Avila off the bench, but 0 bench points versus Santa Clara. Hughes was 0 for 5, 0 for 4 from 3. Dotzler, zero shots attempted, and AJ Casey, 0 shots attempted. It was really relying on the offensive lineup, or the starting lineup rather. That's one thing to keep an eye on, which I thought was kind of interesting because we started versus Santa Clara game 1. We started Isaiah Swope, who had 24 points, 6 for 14 from 3. Gibson Jimerson, obviously, Kellen Thames, Robbie Avila, and Kalu Anya. And Larry Hughes was supposed to be that offensive spark off the bench, and he didn't have a very good game at all. Good to see him bounce back versus Avila. The last thing, 15 offensive rebounds allowed in this one. Like I said, defensively, I think just being out of place on some of these rebound opportunities. And Santa Clara played very well, but they were flying around. A lot of energy, and they honestly impressed me. Being a Gonzaga fan, it kind of reminds me of, I was just watching Arizona State versus Gonzaga yesterday on Sunday afternoon, and Arizona State looks like a team that could make a March Madness appearance as well. So don't be surprised if Santa Clara surprised a lot of people this year, and it's always been Gonzaga and St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference. Don't be surprised if it's Gonzaga and Santa Clara and St. Mary's in the a top 3 there now, instead of just being a top 2 in that conference. But moving on, again, no Robbie Avila for the next couple weeks here. How are we going to make up for it? Now, it's good that we faced an AIA school instead of facing a very tough opponent, so we can kind of figure out rotations and what we want to do without Big Robbie. So who started? It's Amari McCautry, a 3-star freshman who didn't play a single minute against Santa Clara. He gets the start, and he played really solid. 5 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, did a little bit of everything. A very athletic guard, I believe he was about 6'4", 6'5". Gibson Jimerson, a breakout game. He had 16 points for Santa Clara, but 28 points on 6 of 11 from 3 in this one. And then Larry Hughes, like I mentioned a little bit before, 0 points for Santa Clara, 0 for 5, 0 for 4 from 3. 3 rebounds, no assists, 4 fouls. He comes in versus Avila, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 for 8 from the field, and 5 for 8 from 3. All of his shot attempts were from the 3-point line. He played really well off the bench. A 95-44 win. Not a whole lot of in-depth kind of breakdown of this game. Again, it's an NAIA school. It's supposed to be an easy 30-plus point victory, but it's good to get our first win on our home floor. And now, not saying it gets super tough these next few games. It's not super tough opponents. But without Robbie, I mean, every game's kind of up for grabs. So we need guys to step in. The one thing with this game for Avila, and I think you're going to see a lot of it throughout the year, Isaiah Swope, a really good game for Santa Clara, but a very poor game versus Avila. I believe 6 for 14 from 3 alone. He had 24 points for Santa Clara. And this one, I believe he was 1 for 9 from 3. He's not shy to shoot it. He's a tough shot taker and a tough shot maker, but his efficiency is going to kind of fluctuate throughout the year. And I think his shots could get tougher because a lot of defenses are going to be looking at him and Gibson Jimerson rather than Avila because he won't be in the lineup. Robbie did have 16, 5, and 5 in that first game. For beginning of the game, first 8-9 minutes, didn't even score, and then he showed what he can do throughout the rest of it. So hold down the fort, hopefully stay with just that one loss until Robbie gets back in a couple weeks, and then take off from there is hopefully the goal. The good thing about this injury with Robbie is that it won't be super long lasting, and it also doesn't look like he'll miss any conference time at all, conference play. So that's very good as well. But SLU's best player through 2 games, I would say, I guess statistically could be probably Gibson Jimerson. Had 16 points and 28 in the second one, so he's averaging over 20 a game. But the guy that surprised me the most, I shouldn't say surprised, but the guy has pleased me the most in watching him and his performance, and he's been in the starting lineup, which was questionable coming into the season, but he's definitely made a name for himself, and that's Kellen Thames. 16 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 2 steals, and assists and a half per game. He showed a lot of promise, especially defensively. He's kind of that do-it-all utility, super glue to the rotation type of guy. I mean, he just does everything you ask him to do, and a lot of energy, and he's been a really pleasant surprise. Next game for the Billikens will be on Saturday, this upcoming Saturday. I believe it's November 16th at home versus Loyola Marymount, another, I believe it's a Mountain West opponent. So it's going to be not super easy, especially without Robbie, but we're going to have to come out and hopefully not rely on Gibson Jimerson to have to drop 30 to win this one. Need some production from the other guys. Hopefully Isaiah Swope bounces back in that one. But we'll break all that down on Friday's episode going into that matchup versus Loyola, kind of break down the different matchups within the game to keep an eye on. Last thing today we have to cover, and it might be the most important news of the day, is the St. Louis Cardinals, who I've missed discussing with you guys these last few weeks, even over a month now. But we have big news to discuss. Willson Contreras is named the Cardinals' first baseman for 2025. This is something that I advocated for several weeks ago. I thought it was a great move, and I still think right now it's a phenomenal move. You're keeping Willson Contreras, ideally, hopefully, healthy at a much more non-contact position at first base. At catcher, he just got a couple of freak injuries where the bat hit him on the backswing, but you're keeping, ideally, hopefully, a guy healthy for 130, 140 games when you put him at first base. And that's what I think the plan is for Willson Contreras. I think that's one of the main reasons why they put him over there. But also, you're giving freedom at the catcher position to Ivan Herrera and Pedro Pages. You have 3 guys with those 2 and Contreras that can catch any given day. But those other 2 guys are potentially your future duo backstop for the next few years, next 5+ years. So Willson Contreras at first base, you keep him healthy, you keep that bat in the lineup every single day, and you get also to see Ivan Herrera and Pedro Pages. I think the majority of the time Ivan Herrera, but you get to see these 2 guys every single day behind the plate and kind of help in a whole transition period that we're in right now, help Ivan Herrera develop defensively because you're playing him every day, and I think it's going to be really, really good. And you also get Herrera's bat in the lineup every day. I also think it's a great move defensively for first base. Now, our other options were going to be Alec Burleson or Lucan Baker, who are guys that are not known for their defensive prowess as much as their bat in the lineup. And so with this move, that shows me, obviously Burleson will be in the lineup. I would assume a DH every single day. Does not look like Lucan Baker is going to make the team as of right now. That's my kind of conclusion from this. We'll see what his spring training looks like, but love this move. Like I said, I advocated for it several weeks ago. I think it's a tremendous move. He's more nimble. He's very nimble. He's a very nimble athlete, and so I think he's going to transition perfectly into first base defensively. Now, he doesn't have that reach of Paul Goldschmidt. Obviously, Goldie, a multiple-time Gold Glover. 6'3" ish or so, and Wilson's about 5'11", so he's not going to have that reach, and there is going to be a drop off defensively from what we've been used to seeing, obviously, but it's not going to be as bad as what it could have been defensively, and so really like this for several reasons, like I mentioned. Giving the freedom to Herrera and Pajes, I think, is awesome. I think it's awesome that you get to see Contreras, hopefully healthy from this move. And so that's the one thing we've been lacking these last couple of years is just a full Wilson Contreras season. And his offensive ability at the catcher position last year was a top 5 offensive catcher when he was healthy. And you do the math on it. I'm doing a podcast with STL Sports Central right now, so go check that out. A little plug for them. But offensively, we were posting over there that he would have been I believe it's 6th or 7th best offensive first baseman last year if he would have stayed healthy. So love this move. He's going to be the middle of our lineup option. And honestly, really quickly, let's look at what our potential lineup would look like next year. Throwing out some name. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen with this lineup. A lot of movement, positional wise, but also just player wise. Mason Wynn, Alec Burleson, Wilson Contreras, I believe, are your top 3 no matter what. Alec Burleson playing the DH position and Contreras at first base, obviously. Arenado could be your cleanup hitter. I know some people won't like that, but I'm just going to put him there really quick. Third base. Then you have Brennan Donovan. I put him in left field right now. Jordan Walker in right field. Ivan Herrera behind the plate. I would assume, I'm not agreeing with this exactly, but I think they're going to give Nolan Gorman the nod at second base, and then Lars Nootbaar in center field is what I put right now. But Victor Scott could be in the mix, and you could put Victor in center and Lars in left, and Brendan Donovan at second, and Gorman could be out of the lineup. And from honestly 4 to 9, you could kind of flip those guys around. But names wise, it doesn't look like a bad lineup, and it's youthful and it's fun, and I kind of like it, to be honest. But the rotation's a different story for a different day. But yeah. So speaking of the rotation, Sonny Gray, this is other big news. He wants to stay in St. Louis. Now, do I think he stays for the next couple of years? No. He is 34. I believe he's going to be 35 by the time the season comes around next year. And I could see him hopefully having a really good start to 2025, and then we move him at the deadline. But as of right now, he wants to stay in St. Louis, which I guess is good news, depending on how you feel about Sonny Gray. I think there's a lot more consistency. I think the consistency issue is the biggest thing with Sonny Gray, because he looked dominant at times, then he looked like a 4th starter in the rotation at times last year. So very odd year for Sonny. There was not really a lot of in-between starts where it was just like a average or good start. It was either elite or blow up innings and give up 4, 5, 6 runs. So the other big news with the pitching staff is, and this is a tough one to announce, but Ryan Helsley reportedly is likely to be moved this offseason. And as much as I love Ryan Helsley and everything he's done and coming off a career year here in St. Louis, one of the best honestly, probably the best relief pitcher season the Cardinals have ever had, the most saves in a single season for the Cardinals. I think it's the right move. You're trading him high, and I think you can get a lot in return right now. You don't want to go into the next season. Ideally, he pitches really well and you trade him at the deadline, but what if he doesn't? What if he gets injured? So I think this is the time to do it if you're going to do it. And I'm not saying the closer position is easily replaceable, especially when you have a closer that's the top 3 closer in baseball like Ryan Helsley, but that's a position that you can kind of patch the holes for, especially a team that are we trying to really go far next year. So I don't know. But yeah, I think that's an interesting move, but I do think it's the right move, as much as it would hurt me and a lot of Cardinals fans to see Ryan Helsley go probably perform very well somewhere else, like we've seen many former Cardinals do. I think it's the right move, especially for the future of the St. Louis Cardinals. We are going to be back. I'm going to be back. I don't know why I say we. I'm going to be back on Wednesday morning for a Blues reaction podcast to their game versus the Boston Bruins. Hopefully I can get that out late Tuesday night, but it's probably more looking like Wednesday morning. So I will see you guys on Wednesday morning for that Blues reaction podcast, hopefully recapping a W here in St. Louis versus the Boston Bruins. But make sure to go follow us on all social media, TikTok, Instagram. We're also on X. Subscribe on YouTube. Of course, go follow and rate the podcast if you're listening on Spotify or Amazon Music. And I will see you guys Wednesday for the reaction podcast of the Blues versus the Bruins. Thanks, guys.